Hey! You! Before I start, I wanted to tell you that this is not my real voice. This is just a program called Text-to-Speech for Microsoft. Now that you know that, let's get into the video. Cuphead is simply an amazing game, from its visual style that pays homage to the 1930s cartoons, to the mechanics and boss battles that are very original. Even things like the parry mechanic that, although can be annoying sometimes, makes the game even better. I could keep saying why Cuphead is very good for everything it has, but today I'm going to talk about its DLC, which is like the cherry on the top of the cake. This DLC took 4 years to come out since it was announced, having several delays due to things like the pandemic and the crunch to the workers. Until finally, in the E3 of 2021, they announced the release date of the DLC, which was June 30th, 2022. And now that it came out and I played it more than 15 hours, I'm going to review it, analyzing all the points of the DLC. Now without further ado, let the review begin. Cuphead and Mugman are told that the legendary Chalice needs their help and have to travel to a far-off island. So, when Cuphead and Mugman arrive on that island, the legendary Chalice, inside the astral plane in her ghost form, offers Mugman a cookie. Mugman accepts the cookie without knowing that he and the legendary Chalice will switch places, turning Chalice into Miss Chalice and turning Mugman into a ghost. Then, Miss Chalice takes them to meet Chef Saltbaker, who is the best baker in the whole world. And shortly after they meet Chef Saltbaker, Mugman and Chalice switch places again, because the cookie effect is limited. So Chef Saltbaker tells them that to make Chalice real permanently, he needs some ingredients to create the Wonder Tart, a tart that will bring Chalice back to life permanently. The ingredients the chef needs to make the Wonder Tart are the distillery dough, the desert limes, the pineapple mint, the icy sugar cubes, and the gnome berries. The chef tells them that these ingredients are guarded by enemies, so the mission of Cuphead, Mugman and Chalice is defeat those enemies to get the ingredients. Okay, I admit that I copied part of that synopsis, but whatever. After defeating all the bosses, excluding the secret boss, and getting all the ingredients to make the Wonder Tart, spoiler alert, Cuphead and Mugman returned to Chef Saltbaker's bakery, but Chef Saltbaker wasn't there, and there was a secret tunnel in which they entered, and after passing a corridor, they discovered that Chef Saltbaker is evil. And not only that, but he also had captured Chalice, because the last ingredient to make the Wonder Tart was a living soul. And after a battle where Saltbaker brutally kills the ingredients and the best animated battle of the game, Cuphead and Mugman managed to rescue Chalice, but they couldn't get the Wonder Tart because Saltbaker's bakery had been destroyed. Although Chalice didn't care anymore about having the Wonder Tart, because she had obtained 2 new best friends. And the end. After that, Saltbaker was forced to do community service, although I think they should have put him in jail. And after completing the community service, Saltbaker rebuilt his bakery and stopped being evil, or that's what I think. The story of the DLC is good. Although there are things that are not explained, like why Saltbaker wanted the Wonder Tart, or how and when Saltbaker captured Chalice. Seriously, did Saltbaker enter the astral plane or something like that? We will probably never know the answer, but whatever. I dare to say that the DLC story is better than the base game story, because it's more developed and it ends better, with a plot twist that I didn't expect, at least until they leaked that Saltbaker would be a boss. And they made Chalice relevant. Because, in the base game, Chalice doesn't influence anything related to the story, she's only relevant in the gameplay because of the supers she gives. On the other hand, in the DLC it was original that the story was about Chalice wanting to be alive again, practically making the entire DLC about Chalice. I don't have any other comment to add about the story, so let's move on to the next part. The Cuphead DLC brings several new weapons, charms, and supers. Starting with the crackshot, a tracker type shot which when you shoot it in any direction, it bounces back at the enemy, but if you shoot it without it being a tracker, it does considerably more damage. Its X attack is a ball which you can parry, but if you don't parry the ball, it will shoot at the enemy until eventually the ball disappears. This weapon is broken, it's not only a tracker and a parry generator, but it's also one of the strongest weapons, making getting S rank considerably easier. The next weapon is the Converge, an originally discarded weapon that is a triple shot, which is not very strong, but it goes through enemies and you can make it shoot in a specific direction instead of going in 3 directions. Its X attack is a pretty strong laser beam, which is pretty fun to use and is pretty accurate. This is my favorite weapon of the whole game. It's very original and I use it a lot. The next and last weapon is the twist up weapon that, as its name says, goes upwards. This weapon from close is weak, but from far is strong, and its X attack is a mini tornado which rotates in circles. I use this weapon very little, and it's mainly useful with bosses which you can only do damage from above. Now it's the turn of the new charms. The first one is the Astral Cookie, which turns you into Miss Chalice and gives you all her abilities like double jump, dash parry, and invincible roll, and not only that, but it also gives you an extra life, which can be very useful. In airplane mode it changes the main weapon to a triple, and the bomb shot is now a smaller bomb which comes out faster than the bombs of Cuphead and Mugman. And Chalice not only has that, but it also has 3 new supers. The first one is a ray which shoots vertically and is very useful for bosses which you can't reach with the first super of Cuphead and Mugman. The next super of Chalice, it's an extra life, and that's it, it's literally nothing more than an extra life. And the last super of Chalice, which I think is the best of the 3 supers, is a super that transforms Chalice into a literal gods that invokes a bunch of ghosts that start attacking the enemy, and not only that, but it also gives you an item which you can parry. Now that I'm done talking about the Astral Cookie, let's move on to the next charm, which is a broken relic, that to activate you have to do a lot of things that I'm not going to explain because that would make the video too long, but well, what the charm does is change the weapon every time you press the button to shoot, and not only that, but it's also a mix of almost all the charms, making this the best charm of all. And the last charm is the Heart Ring, a charm which gives you an extra life on your first, third, and sixth parry. This charm is the best of the charms that give you extra lives, because not only can give you up to 6 lives, but it can also make getting S rank easier. The new mechanics in general seemed good to me for the most part, having some inferior to others, but that doesn't make them bad, and to be honest, some of the new mechanics are better and more original than some of the base game. Now that I'm done talking about the new mechanics, let's move on to the next part. Since the run and gun levels don't exist in the DLC, now to get coins you must go to the King's Palace and defeat 5 mini-bosses, which you can only defeat by parrying them. All these bosses are based on all the chess pieces, starting first with the pawns. In this mini-boss, the pawns are standing on a wooden stick, and every so often, they jump to attack the player. This mini-boss is a good introduction to the king bosses, as it is not very difficult. The next mini-boss is the Knight, a boss that is a bit frustrating, as it has a variety of sword attacks, and if you try to parry it without waiting, you will most likely get hurt, as this boss is always shielded. And this boss has more life than the pawns. The next boss is the Bishop, and to defeat it, you have to put out these candles that are all over the stage, and when you finish putting out the candles, the Bishop's head will become a parry, and when you parry it, more candles will light up, and so on. While the Bishop's head is chasing you, some jingle bells will start following you. This was the hardest boss for me to beat of the King's mini-bosses, because when I thought the level was over, it kept going, and I ended up losing. The fourth boss is the Rook, a boss that will be throwing pink heads at you, which you will have to parry to hurt him, but, while the heads are raining, the Rook will also start throwing lightning bolts and skulls at you. Fun fact, this boss seems to be in love with a guillotine with the face of Beppy Boop. The next and last boss is the Queen, the most complicated boss of all, because she has a lot of life, and 2 attacks, and although it sounds a little 2 attacks, these are enough to kill you several times. The first attack are these lions that she throws, and that are difficult to parry if you are not playing with Chalice, because with Cuphead and Mugman you will most likely get hurt when these lions come out. The Queen's second attack is to launch these golden and diamond eggs, which can be quite annoying, since they are difficult to dodge. To attack the Queen you have to be very precise, because you have to parry the back of these cannons to make them shoot. I feel that this boss is the best of all the king bosses, because of its high difficulty, its originality, and since the Queen is the strongest piece in chess, this is the most difficult boss. This may be a controversial opinion, but I like the new way of getting coins much more than the old way, not only because in the king bosses you always get coins after defeating a boss, unlike the run and gun levels where you had to look for the coins on your own, and there were times when you completed a run and gun level without all the coins, but also because it is much more fun to defeat a mini boss to get coins than to complete a tedious level. Now let's go to the next and last part. This DLC is simply amazing for all the content it has. Although it is not too much content, I am completely satisfied with the DLC. Everything or almost everything improves from the base game, from the new bosses, the new soundtrack, the new mechanics, the new story, and I am not exaggerating when I say this. Seriously, this DLC has an immense amount of love and details, and Studio MDHR dedicated a lot of passion to this DLC, because they even decided not to rush the workers, to make the DLC come out as good as possible. And the DLC was very good, it exceeded all my expectations and was definitely worth the 4-year wait. Studio MDHR should be very proud of what they did, because it is one of the best DLCs there is in all video games, and it is the perfect ending for Cuphead. So if you have the opportunity to buy the DLC, I recommend you to do it. It is not very expensive, and for the amount of hours of fun you will have, it is completely worth it, and you would be supporting Studio MDHR for all the effort they did to release this DLC. So without more to say, I'll see you soon in the next video, that if I am lucky will be out this year.